Today is April 16th, and I'm calling the meeting to order of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I'd like to welcome everybody. We have a pretty full agenda today, so we'll try to keep you moving along. Can we establish a quorum?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Kartner?
Here.
Mr. Lester?
Here.
Mr. Hoff? Mr. Kane?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Robertson?
Here.
Mr. Soyson?
Here.
And Commissioner Gordon? And Secretary Daly.
Here.
Madam Chair, please let the record reflect that 6 members are present and we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
Yep. Yes. Yep. The agenda.
I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve today's agenda.
Yeah, right.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, has everybody
Do the
approved, looked at the minutes from March 19th?
Yep.
Move we approve the minutes from March 19th.
And I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. I have no report, and Commissioner Gordon is not here. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to say?
No report.
Okay, moving on to number 7, Secretary Daly.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have just a few administrative matters that I wanted to bring to your attention. The first is an update on the update of the master plan, which we are scheduled to begin very shortly. As you know, we've already conducted the economic development study. We are beginning the housing study, and both of those documents are designed to provide some background information that'll help in the development, review and development of the master plan. We are also starting our internal collection of background data, other background data that will assist you in that process. I anticipate that we'll be starting some discussions around the master plan this summer. So related to that, I just wanted to bring to your attention that I will be reaching out to you to kind of gauge your sense on how you'd like to approach agendas moving forward. We do have evening meetings that are set aside for work sessions, but if our day meeting is relatively brief in the agenda, I'd like to get a sense of whether you'd like to look at adding some work session time to the day meeting, either in addition to or instead of an evening meeting. Of course, we want to be conscious of the fact that the evening meetings are designed as well to allow some public attendance. So those are just things that we'd like to kind of keep our eye on, and I'll get a sense from you of how you'd like to approach those agendas moving forward. But do be aware, we've had a few evening meetings that have been canceled because we have not had agenda items. I don't anticipate that will continue. So just keep those evening meetings on reserve moving forward. Last thing I wanted to mention is that the commissioners are holding a public hearing next Thursday, April 25th, on something known as DAF, which is basically agricultural practice of spreading residuals from a process designed to process the the biosolids that are a result of certain processes like chicken, processing chicken parts, things like that. That public hearing is potentially going to lead to some zoning code changes. So if you want to listen in on that, educate yourself on that, the public hearing will be on Thursday, April 25th.
Daytime?
It is in the morning. I don't know exactly when that's scheduled at this point.
Okay.
And that's all I have for administrative matters.
Okay. Extensions?
Hi, good morning.
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 We do have one plan that received an extension since last month. It is M09025 Walkerwood Estates. So obviously by the M09, you can tell this is an older, the 09 is the year that we started that. So this is the 13th one-year extension. It is just a minor subdivision, one lot, so it's, people who are looking to subdivide their property, but they just are not in a position to move forward and complete it yet. So that is in Commissioner District 2, and again, it's a one-lot minor subdivision.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. BZA cases? Do we have any?
There are no BZA cases.
Okay. Any other?
We are going to give you another legislative update. Hannah Weber is here with me, just like she was last month. And with the conclusion of the legislative session, we have a better sense of what passed and potentially what may be coming down the pike for us to consider. Hannah?
Yes, thanks, Daphne. So as stated, Sine Die was on April 8th. So I have been tracking these listed legislation and detailed whether they were sent to the governor or not. Starting with the big housing package, this was sent to the governor for signature, and in summary basically says that the final language, there was a lot of amendments that went along with this one, states that jurisdictions may not prohibit placements of new manufactured homes and modular dwellings in a zoning district that allows single-family residential. This will require a zoning text amendment by the county, as we currently do not allow manufactured homes. This legislation also details qualified affordable housing projects. There are two housing projects that could possibly impact Carroll County. The first one is a qualified affordable housing project on land historically owned by the state of Maryland, and this is Warfield and Sykesville, has been identified. And then also a residential project that is on land subject to a ground lease that is wholly owned by a nonprofit and includes improvements owned by an entity that is controlled by a nonprofit organization. And basically, the qualified affordable housing projects, the density of these projects can exceed the density authorized by existing zoning. Another housing bill, this one actually failed, conversion of commercial buildings for residential use. It was basically going to require counties inventory the number of vacant commercial buildings and develop a plan on how to convert the commercial buildings for residential uses. Another housing bill is the local reporting requirements. This has passed and sent to the governor for signature, requiring jurisdictions to report information about certain building and development permit applications to the state. It is anticipated this information will be included in the yearly annual report. And this strictly pertains to building or development permit applications, which includes a residential housing component as part of the development. Next, we have cannabis. This was a long bill. Licensee location restrictions, basically establishing distance requirements for dispensaries that jurisdictions cannot exceed. So at the most, a dispensary can be 500 feet from a pre-existing primary secondary school, licensed child care center, registered family care home, pre-existing playground, rec center, library, public park, or place of worship, and a dispensary cannot be within a half mile of another cannabis dispensary. Not included in this written update, this bill actually permits the outdoor growing of cannabis in the ag zone. Also in this bill is language about protest of license renewals. And then another cannabis bill that failed was basically a legislation detailing where cannabis operations could put signage, but that again failed. And then lastly, tagging onto what Daphne was alluding to with the DAF public hearing, House Bill 991 was sent to the governor. Food processing residuals utilization permit, which would require obtain this permit at any site where residuals, including DAF residuals, are being used in conjunction with an agricultural operation. And I believe this will go into effect on July 1.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Number 8 is a special report, Eldersburg Overlook Retirement Village.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, sorry. David Beecraft with the Bureau of Development Review. Due to limitations with the mouse, I am sitting on this end of the table this time, so hopefully it doesn't throw you guys off too much. So the first project we have on the agenda this morning is called the Eldersburg Overlook Retirement Village. This is file number S-23-0027. With me are quite a few representatives for the project, so I will let them introduce themselves.
Thanks, David. Good morning, everyone. Kelly Schaefer Miller, 73 East Main Street, Westminster, Maryland, 21157. I'm here this morning on behalf of St. John Properties. I'll let Tom introduce himself. Several of our team members are just going to stay seated in the rear. So we have with us Matt Taylor from St. John Properties, Allie Phillips from St. John Properties, Kevin Scott from NVR, who's just here to speak a little bit to the 55 plus development, Jackie Chandler and Kyle Schmidt with Traffic Concepts, Jim Mathias with DDC, and had to check to make sure he's back there, and Ryan Lang. Brian, sorry, I'm terrible with pronouncing your last name, from Century Engineering. So, good morning.
Good morning.
You introduce yourself since you're right here.
I'm Thomas Pelin with St. John Properties. That's all.
Okay, perfect. And this project is before you, as you stated, as a special report. So per the zoning code, we'll get into that a little bit later, but per the zoning code, this has to come before the Planning and Zoning Commission prior to going before the Board of Zoning Appeals. So that is what this meeting is about. And ultimately, we are looking for some sort of action as it relates to this project. So in the zoning code, it states that before it goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals, that it should go to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review of the site development plan and traffic study and a determination regarding the density, exterior design, and the site layout. Okay? So for those who are unfamiliar, this property is down in the Eldersburg area. It is south of Bennett Road and kind of east of Progress Way, north of 26. So it is shown outlined here, and it is this backward C-shaped property here. So as you can see, looking at this property, so the property itself is just shy of 60 acres. And it is currently undeveloped, and you can see although this aerial is fairly old, it's still pretty accurate as to how the site looks. So a lot of this area up here is undeveloped and is currently meadow. You do have some areas of trees once you get further south, and then you do see the stream that runs to the property. So to the east, you can see that there is an existing subdivision here. So this is Wilson Farms. And then also to the east, up in this area, it abuts the Long Meadow subdivision as well. Properties to the west consist of commercial and industrial zone properties. So these properties over here along Progress Way and along London Town and Georgetown. So these are commercial industrial zone properties. This property here is also owned by the same entity and is also zoned industrial. So the subject property and all adjoining properties lie in the existing and final planning water and sewer service area. So everything proposed here is going to be hooked up to public water and sewer, no private well or septic. So to give a little history on this, so I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. The property in question ultimately is one of four, which comprise what is known as the Beatty property. And St. John Properties has been gracious enough to provide this drawing here, which shows ultimately their end goal as to what they're looking to do with those four separate parcels that comprise this. For this project in particular, we're going to focus solely just on the area that's not grayed out here. As I mentioned, that backward C shape. To give a little history on this, so this is not anything that's new to the county. There's been a lot of discussions in past years in reference to this. So in March 2022, there were morning and evening meetings at the town hall with Commissioner Rothstein down in the Eldersburg area to invite conversation as relates to these four developments proposed. During that meeting, there were discussions that were focused on environmental impacts as well as traffic. And an email was received after that meeting, which was included in your packets from citizen comments as related to that. Ms. Kelly had relayed to me that there were additional public hearings set in, I think it was November that same year. Similar concept, just town hall meetings to make sure the public was aware of what's proposed, to try to get an understanding of their concerns and questions as it relates to that. And on March 30th, 2022, this master plan that's shown on the screen was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission as a special report to receive initial feedback from the commission and as well as the public. The subject property, the one that we're talking about now, was depicted as being developed with an age-restricted community of attached units, and that is still what is proposed. Discussion from the commission revolved around traffic, and then there were citizens present at that meeting as well, and they raised concerns about environmental impacts, water and sewer allocation for these units, as well as traffic as it relates to this proposed development. So in November of last year, 2023, an initial site development plan was submitted and distributed for technical review agencies. The developer proposes to construct 156 two-story townhouse units on the Eldersburg Overlook Retirement Village. All units are proposed as attached, and they're shown in groups of 4 to 5, depending on which area you're looking at. The building locations are within the northern group or northern portion of the property, so that property that was mostly meadow and open area, with half the proposed between the industrial zone property and Bennett Road. So half of them are shown here, and the other half are shown between the industrial zone property over here and the Wilson Farm subdivision here. Sidewalks are proposed throughout the site with connectivity throughout the Beatty property or the other 3 developments proposed. Also proposed is the construction of a clubhouse shown here. This will be a 1-story clubhouse with outdoor seating and a pool and independent parking. The clubhouse is shown as being centralized between the units and will be accessed directly from internal roads. So it's shown as connecting to Road E, which will be named as we continue through the process. So a retirement village is a conditional use in the R20,000 zoning district, and it requires Board of Zoning Appeals authorization. As mentioned, prior to BZA review, it has to come before the Planning and Zoning Commission for site development plan and traffic study, and to make determinations regarding the density proposed, the exterior design, and the site layout. So the zoning code states the bulk requirements, regulations, and density in a retirement village and the R20,000 zoning district shall be determined by the Planning Commission, and the maximum that's allowable shall not exceed 3 1/2 dwelling units per acre. So this development is on a property with an area just shy of 60 acres, as I mentioned. So the maximum density at a ratio of 3.5 for every acre would be 205 units. As mentioned, they are currently proposing 156 units. The setbacks that they are showing on the plan are shown as being 40 feet from this property boundary here, and 40 feet from this property boundary up on the north, and the rest of them being 50 feet. So it'll be 50 feet from this subdivision, 50 feet from this property boundary here, as well as you get further south in the property, it's shown as 50 feet from those boundaries as well. The development proposes a road network on the property, which is to be privately owned and maintained. So all of these roads, including the one that will connect up to Bennett Road, are to be privately owned and maintained. They will not be maintained by the county. Access to the site will be via Bennett Road. There are 2 access points shown on future roadways that will be constructed, one shown here and then one shown here. Both of these access points are to be emergency access only. At this time, they're not to be used by the general public, just for emergency services, so fire, EMS, stuff like that. Each unit does have a garage and a private driveway that's provided, as well as additional parking areas that have been added to the plan. So for guest parking, so there's an additional parking area here. Here's one shown here, and then down here. For the clubhouse, as you can see, there is independent parking for that as well. So parking requirements for a community center equal 1 space for every 3 persons based on maximum capacity. We don't have those numbers quite yet, but they will be provided as we maneuver through this system, and we will relay those once they are provided. A traffic impact study was required and submitted to the county for all 4 parcels, all 4 projects. So a traffic study was completed for the entirety of the development, not just this one in particular. The study determined that the combined impact of the 4 proposed projects would in total impact the intersection capacity of Maryland 32 and Bennett Johnsville Road, Maryland 32 and Progress Way, as well as Maryland 32 and Londontown Boulevard. The developer has proposed mitigation improvements to each of the 3 intersections, and the county and Maryland State Highway Administration have approved the concept plan of that traffic study. And I believe there is going to be a follow-up presentation to this one that gives a little more insight into that. So building elevations are shown within the plan set. Proposed colors are including tan, brown, blue, and gray, and it looks like that there's white trim accents provided, as well as garage doors. Although materials are not yet annotated, the rendering appears to depict siding as well as stone veneer and asphalt shingle roofs, decorative garage doors, trim details, roof lines, shutters, light fixtures, custom windows. It seems to be pretty consistent with what we've seen elsewhere. Street lighting is also proposed. It's not required, but it is proposed on the plans. They are showing this type of street lighting detail for that. And these pole lights will be roughly 16 feet in height. So on April 2nd, 2024, the Design and Architectural Review Committee, which is an advisory group, did meet to discuss this project. They did have some concern, well, they had some comments as it relates to this development. which I'm going to read through for you now. So the first one, it was stated that with only front elevations provided for the units, it's unknown as to how the rears are going to look. Some of these neighboring subdivisions are going to be looking at the rears of these units, so it's unsure how that may look for them. It was stated that the residential units do look identical to one another. They questioned if there were plans to visually distinguish the units to help residents find their unit and not, their neighbor's unit or anything like that. They recommended varying the front elevations or the colors. And elevation shows steps into the main entrance, so it's hard to see on this screen, but there were steps shown leading into the main entrance, and they questioned if that was the best practice for an age-restricted community.
I have a question while we have this. If the people that own the place, if their car is in the garage, is there room in the front right there for other cars to park?
Yes. Excuse me. Yes, the length of the driveway will be 19 feet to the sidewalk, so even additional feet from the sidewalk on. So there will be space for 2 cars to park in the driveway in
So
addition.
this can help as far as parking
Yes.
for other people.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So the subdivision plan was subject to citizen involvement at the December 2023 Technical Review Committee meeting. There were 2 emails that were received prior to the meeting regarding the proposed Road A connection, and I'm just going to backtrack here. One more. So regarding this connection onto Bennett Road, as well as the density of the development, and there is a cemetery provided or existing on the property that's shown here. So they had some concerns as it relates to that as well. 2 citizens were at the meeting, and they asked questions and voiced concern regarding this cemetery as well. And the remaining citizen that was at the meeting questioned the proposed private road A and whom would be permitted to use this roadway. After the meeting, there was a phone call received from one citizen that voiced concern over the traffic that would be generated from this development onto Bennett Road. So, as stated, staff and the developer are currently seeking a determination from the commission regarding specifics to the density proposed, the exterior design, as well as the site layout of this development. Following this determination from the commission, the conditional use request will be heard by the Board of Zoning Appeals, and then it will continue through the site development plan process and will be brought back before the commission as a concept plan once it reaches that level. So if you have any questions, I'm certainly able to do the best I can. I'm sure the same can be said.
Yes, thank you, David. And just to, with the chair's permission, we've kind of prepared a presentation on a lot of the anticipated questions and some of the questions raised in the staff report. And then, of course, we're available for any additional questions that the commission has, but we anticipated some right off the bat. So we have some information prepared for you.
Okay. Do you want to proceed with that?
Thank you.
Okay.
So as I introduced, our entire team is here this morning from St. John. Just to clarify, St. John is the prospective developer of the property. I failed to also introduce that Brooks Leahy is present and with us on behalf of the property owners. The Beatty family still owns this property, so he's also here today, this morning. So as Mr. Beecraft introduced, thank you, David, and I will remind everyone, because several of you were part of the special report presentation for this master plan back in March of 2022. I think that Mr. Smith was perhaps not here, and Mr. Robertson was also, and perhaps Mr. Soyson was not here at that juncture in time on Planning Commission, but the rest of you were present and saw this master plan for all 4 developments at that point in time. Not much has changed in the overall plan since then, so I just wanted to bring that to your attention. As David mentioned, St. John did attend some additional community town hall meetings hosted by Commissioner Rothstein. So those were in 2022 and I believe as recent as November of 2023. This plan that's presented, today we're talking about two of the elements. First, this retirement village, and then later on in the agenda, the southern residential portion. But it's difficult to really talk about this out of context of the entire property, and we realize that. So that's why you see a lot of the visuals showing the full Beatty property, and that's why the traffic impact analysis has been done for the entirety of the project, and we will be sharing some of that information with you. Just to confirm, this plan that's been presented is consistent with the master plan. It is within the designated growth area and the priority funding area of Freedom, and it is, as David mentioned, served by public facilities. So all of this will be developed on public water and sewer. There were several questions in the staff report, or not several, 3 questions in the staff report related to some of the architectural components. We are here to answer some of those, give you some more insight on that. We also have asked Mr. Kevin Scott of NVR to join us to explain some elements. Just to clarify, NVR is not a contract purchaser of this residential project at this point in time, but Kevin was willing to come and speak to some of those elements because he has hands-on experience with developing this type of product in Carroll County, in this Freedom area, and in other areas as well. So I will kind of just lay the foundation, and then if there are any specific questions related to that component, I would ask Kevin to share his insight. So I believe that Kevin brought with him some visuals. Okay. Kevin did bring some visuals to show some of the rear elevations. That was one of the questions raised in the staff report, is what will these units look like from the rear? So we did bring some examples of what that would look like. I also wanted to point out that there is landscaping proposed as well. So there will be additional buffering from the adjoining properties to the site of this, but to the extent that they are visible, we brought some samples of that. Matt, do you want to coordinate handing those up here, or is Daphne going to? We want you to be able to see those, so we'll hand you some copies to be able to look at. So while you're passing those around, and if there are any questions about those, please don't hesitate to jump in. But while you're passing those around, the second question that was raised was about the varying front elevations. And yes, it is the intent to provide an interesting design element with varying front architecturals. So what was provided initially was kind of a sample of the architecturals proposed, but we do anticipate having a more interesting design where they don't all look the exact same, if you will. So there's some samples of that, I believe, in there as well. Okay, thanks, Kevin. And then there was also a question about the access to the front door, with there being a step. There is no, it may have been misrepresented on the architecturals that were first submitted or misinterpreted, but there is no proposed step into the front door. The standard, and Kevin again can speak to some of the specifics of this, but the standard for this product is a 0-foot entry, 0-inch probably entry. So there's no proposed steps there. I'll briefly speak to the kind of community center clubhouse component, and then let you, if you have any specific questions of us related to this, so that Kevin can answer those as well. The clubhouse community center that's proposed, what has been shown on this plan is really just a sample design of a clubhouse community center. We anticipate that you will see something more concrete, if you will, at the time of concept plan. This is not the specific design that is going to be constructed. We do anticipate that we can provide adequate parking under the parking standards for whatever is ultimately proposed for that community center. But I just want to be clear that what's shown here with the pool specifically is really just a sample of a community center. We have not gotten into the weeds yet on the specific community center that will be shown on this plan by concept. It will be restricted to residents of the community only. So some of the questions that were raised in public comment were, is there going to be additional traffic to the site because people can just access the center? No, that is not the case. This is for residents of the community only. It is designed as a community amenity for that development. And then again, the parking, there is parking proposed on the plan related to the community center. That will, we understand that we will have to meet the specific parking requirements because the parking for that is determined by the capacity of that building. So if that changes the capacity, because right now we don't have a maximum capacity for that structure, we understand that we need to provide the required parking for that. Mr. Robertson, I sense a question.
A lot of them, but
Okay.
just a couple here.
Okay.
And maybe you'll address this later, but
No, please, go ahead.
I heard that there's no lighting, there's no street lighting that's proposed for this, and you have a 55-plus community going in, and there's no street lighting on it. Is that correct? Did I understand that?
Yes, I believe that there is street lighting proposed. David, can you go back to the little,
I saw a street light
Sorry.
there, but I think someone said that
Wasn't
that's still up in the air.
no, there is street lighting proposed, and I believe it was 16 feet poles. Is that correct, David?
I saw a picture of a street light somewhere in
Yes.
this, but
There we go.
There it is.
Yep. So that's the proposed street lighting, kind of nicely designed architecturally, poles 16 feet in height.
Okay, and the houses are designed for a density of how many people, or that doesn't matter? So if you sell one of these dwellings to a 55-plus person, you would expect how many people? Or is there no restriction
I will ask
there?
Kevin if there's kind of like a standard or average that they anticipate. I will, before Kevin answers any specifics, I will state that the code does require, the code and requires 55-plus residents. So
Right.
it is anticipated and planned that there are no school-age children in these residences. But I'm not certain if just from industry standard, there's kind of an average amount of people. Kevin, do you?
So are these two-bedroom houses then?
Good morning.
Are these
Kevin Scott.
Are these two-bedroom houses?
They are 2 bedrooms with an optional third.
Okay. Okay.
So by and large, I mean, rarely do we see more than 2 people, honestly. The second or third bedrooms is for
So
visitors.
you would consider this all but a gated community?
Yes.
That's correct, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm fine for now.
They can have grandchildren, children visit, and I
Sure.
think there's a time limit to how long they can stay, but they will
Correct.
have family. My experience in selling some of these is definitely, while it's a senior community, they enjoy having others around. So
And there's a deed restriction that the owners have to be 55 or older. So
Correct.
it runs with the property.
yes.
Okay.
Kelly, I don't recall in the last site, and forgive me if my memory is wrong, but I don't recall an entrance to the over 55 off of Bennett. Is that a change in what we're seeing? It was on the last plan as well? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so in the traffic impact study, are we including, you may have said it because there was a list of roads. Are we including Oklahoma and Bennett in that traffic study?
So we are going to do a little presentation, if you're ready for it now, on all of the traffic components of this.
Good.
And I would like our traffic engineers to confirm that, but I do anticipate that was likely
it.
included in the study.
Okay.
But they can 100% answer that for you.
All right.
So if we want to, David, can Jackie control the mouse of the presentation? Jackie, if you want to come up.
Before we dive into the details there,
Yes.
just a couple overview questions, I guess. There's, how many, in the write-up, 156 townhomes, 4 to 5 units per, I'll call it a pod, however you, I don't know if that's the right language.
I don't know, either. We'll go with it.
So there's 31 to 39, doing the math, of these pods on the parcel. What acreage does a typical 4 to 5 unit, pod take up?
It's a
good question. I'm not sure that I know the answer to that. We'd have to look at it. You mean the actual
engineering
physical area
question.
that it would take to
So
place this?
so if there's 4 of these townhomes with their backyard and driveway and all that kind of stuff, what acreage does that take up, comprised of?
Jim would have it.
Yeah.
The units are 28 by 70.
So the reason I'm asking is because there's, the density requirement is 3.5 units per acre. It seems to me that this is going to exceed that.
No, this is actually under the density requirements.
Well, I get it, but when you break it down into the 4 to 5 units,
Yes, I understand what you're saying. The thing about the 55-plus communities is that the code does not specify how they get developed. So if you were developing, for example, a single-family dwelling, you would perhaps you could still put maybe a single-family dwelling at that density if you were spreading it over the acreage, because an acre is 50. Who can tell me how big an acre is? 43,000 square feet, 560. So if you take that and do the density calculation, what you'll see is that still could get you, an R 10,000 from a density perspective is 10,000 square feet for a unit, right?
Right.
And so arguably, you could get 4 units in an acre at that calculation. Now, realistically, we know that that's a different story, but as the math goes, that could be the case. The way the retirement village is set forth in the code is such that it can be developed at a higher density because of the difference in the housing product that you're getting. And so, for example, what's being proposed here are the villa-style townhomes, but what could be proposed would be more of a multi-story condo structure, if you would, for 55 plus,
So
which would be much higher in density per acre.
it's really clustering when you think about it.
In some, it has many similarities, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have to look at how you define density, and density is based on gross acreage. So you've got so many acres, and at 3.5 units, an average number, right? But of course, the units, if you said a house on a lot, if you just looked at the area of the house on any given lot, you'd say that's more dense
No,
perhaps.
I understand. Yeah, that's the issue we've had with clustering since clustering was invented.
Some have had issues with clustering.
Yeah.
Ms. Miller, there's one more question I
Yes.
have about so all this traffic is going to be put onto Bennett Road, is that correct?
That is correct.
So with a village this large, I'm surprised that there's just one ingress and egress for that many units. You also mentioned there was an ingress and egress for emergency vehicles. So if that's going to be the case, what's going to prevent traffic from not using the emergency vehicle? I don't understand all that. It seems to me there should be another way in and another way out of this project for this density that we're talking about. There's some future plans here for but I'm looking at the now. What's the answer to this?
So as we've gone through this process, the initial feedback we got was that the idea of limiting access to Bennett Road, the idea of having those 2 access points for emergency vehicles only is that those would be some kind of a gated, that would be activated by the emergency equipment itself as opposed to anybody being able to drive through. The concern is with the industrial zone to the south and to the west of the property, that industrial traffic would go through the property and be able to get to Bennett Road. So in an effort to preclude that from happening, we have those 2 emergency-only access points so that the emergency vehicles could get there in the fastest way possible, but not just anybody could drive through in either direction. So with the single access point off of Bennett Road, that provides adequate access for the development as it's proposed. It's basically, it's its own thing to the north, right? That residential area. And quite honestly, we were guided to the idea of just a single access point. We got a lot of feedback from whether community, county, and whatnot, that we really should limit ourselves to that single access point, and that people did not want to see the cut-through traffic. So as a result, that's how we came up with the layout that's proposed.
Michael?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your question.
Something else?
Oh, it's just, on that point, single access into a 60-acre community, that's limiting, I think. Talk a little bit more. You mentioned landscaping for the backside of these. Tell us what that'll look like.
So I did include some drawings in here that show that landscaping. It's going to split the property so you can actually see it zoomed in. So there is landscaping shown, just throughout the community, but mainly along this future extension of Progress Way. You see this landscaping that's shown. And then if we move on to the second half of the proposed community, you can see landscaping continues around that industrial zone area, as well as this landscaping that is existing in between the two communities. So this is Wilson Farms that you remember from the east side. These are the proposed units, and there is a wooded line here that runs through. And to kind of give a better representation of that, there are some pictures that I took actually yesterday. So the date on the pictures are incorrect, but these are the pictures I took yesterday, and you can kind of see just standing back on the property. So this is that Wilson Farms subdivision shown here. And this is the existing vegetation between the subject property and those commercial industrial zone properties to the west. So you can kind of see some buildings sticking up here. And then these are just other pictures of the site as it looks now.
David, there's a board has nicer colors on it, if you will. That's pointed this way, but you all can't see it. So I'm just going to stick with you with it for a second, because this kind of just shows a colored visual representation of everything that David just showed you. And I'm happy to.
And so, David, what we're saying is the existing tree line is going to be largely undisturbed. Is that what you were thinking?
It's stated as to be remain, yeah, so to remain there. So as far as if no trees are coming down, I would have to defer to them.
Grading is what grading is. Okay.
To the extent that it would be disturbed, would replace landscaping along that edge there for sure.
Okay.
Which is represented on that board there. You can see the dark green line that runs along that edge there near Kelly's left hand.
I think it's helpful to see it in color.
And again, I'm going back on fuzzy memory. The homes that we're now showing, the single-family homes fronting Bennett, I could have sworn we had a kind of a private shared drive.
There was originally it was proposed. Good memory. There was originally a single driveway running along the south side of those lots without access going out onto the road. And in looking at that, you're the person at the end of that road, and if your neighbors don't shovel or plow or whatever it is, so we decided it'd be a little more efficient if we just had a couple shared access or a couple shared driveways going out onto Bennett Road. So 6 units there have a combined total of 3 driveway points coming onto Bennett Road.
Okay.
The 7th one, which is all the way to the east, is accessing off of the road that comes in off of Bennett.
I see that.
So it was a change, but we just felt it just felt better. At the end of the day, if you were buying that individual lot, probably prefer that access, and that's the direction we went with it. So.
And so I'll just mention too, because it's a perfect segue. So I do have some pictures as well of roughly where that access point onto Bennett would be. So just judging by the property across the road, this is roughly where it would come out onto Bennett. So you can see looking back at the property, and this is looking left or west down Bennett, and this is looking east down Bennett. And then again, this is looking at that existing vegetation. And I will mention too, just because there was comments on landscape. So this is before the commission as a special report. There are still landscape comments from our landscape specialists here at the county. So not every comment has been addressed as of yet, but we wanted to, so that they could go before the Board of Zoning Appeals for their conditional use. They had requested coming to the commission as a special report instead of as a concept plan.
Okay. Thank you for the pictures of the units, but I didn't see a lot of difference between them. I saw a couple windows, but they all look pretty much cookie cutter design. Is there something that can be done for the fronts to make them more appealing, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah, so first I want to clarify that this isn't necessarily the product that will be built here. We don't have any agreement with St. John, so this is just our representation of what we would think we would do. So at a later point, should we move forward, certainly, we will work on that. We have one other product line that we could offer as well. But anecdotally, I just want to add, this exact product is under construction, and our model opens April 25th.
Right.
A couple miles east of this site at Nels Acres, and it's been very well received so far. We haven't officially started sales, but we do a lot of online marketing, and all signs point to us having the first 3 buildings sold by the end of the month. So it's been very well received for what it's worth. But yes, to your point, we can certainly vary it more than is reflected here.
Anything else?
Yes, I'm going to ask, I'm going to, Jackie, you can take my seat and I'll come down. Well, Jackie can hear. I'll let her control the mouse and I'll come down.
Yeah.
I'll swap with you.
Gonna talk about traffic.
So I've asked Jackie from Traffic Concepts to sit up here with us because she prepared a little visual presentation related to the traffic component. And just to clarify, again, what we're here for right now is the 55 plus, but we anticipated that everyone would have questions about the overall traffic scheme here. So what Jackie is going to show you is all of the traffic that has been reviewed and approved. The traffic study has been approved, and the mitigation proposal has been I forget exactly what word David used, but reviewed and approved by staff and SHA. So Jackie's going to show you all of those elements. They're not all directly related to the 55 plus, so I just want that to be understood.
Okay.
Good morning, Jackie Chandler with Traffic Concepts, 7525 Conley Drive, Hanover, Maryland. As mentioned, we prepared a traffic impact study for the entire Beatty property. So the exhibit that you can see on the screen now is actually from our study, Exhibit 1. It shows all of the intersections that we analyzed in the study. Now, the process that we go through is the intersections to be studied are approved by the county first. They tell us what intersections they want us to look at. In this case, we looked at 16 intersections. They're all noted. They have little circles on them, and they're numbered and labeled. The properties that were included in the analysis are the subject property, the Overlook, that's 156 age-restricted units, but it also included the Preserve, that's 7 single families, Reservoir Run, which is the residential to the south, 34 single families, and then the Corporate Park as well, which is in the center, which is 312,000 square feet of flex office space. So the traffic impact study, the result, I'll back up a little bit. So I'll give you a sort of an overview of the study, and I'll try to do it quickly for you. So what we do, once we establish these intersections, is we go out and we physically do traffic counts during the peak hours, the morning peak, the evening peak, and the Saturday noontime peak. So we actually have physical counts of the volumes that are there. We add on to that as we go through the traffic study. We add what we call a background condition, where we add a growth rate to all of those volumes. We also add any developments that are underway but have not been built yet, so we can capture their impact. And then the final, what we call the future conditions, is where we add in the site. The traffic impact study was done in 2 phases. We assumed that the corporate park would be built first, and then we assumed all the residential would come second. But the impact of all of that together showed overall intersection levels of service were adequate. at all 16 intersections. Now, that's the overall level of service. What the county likes us to look at is also the level of service on each approach to coming up to that intersection. So we noticed that there were some issues with that, and in order to support the development, we offered mitigation at 3 different intersections. Now, remember, it's the whole site that we looked at, so, oh, I have control of this. How do I? Do I just go that way? So the first intersection, you know, that's most relevant to the project that's before you today, Maryland 32 at Johnsville Road and Bennett Road. We took a look at this intersection and some ways that we could improve what's there, you know, the issues that are there today. And what this developer is offering to do is to extend the existing right turn lane. So I'm going to scroll back. This is what it looks like today. And you can see that short right turn lane coming out of Bennett. And I'll scroll forward to what's proposed to extend that turn bay. Now, what that does, the extension will allow it to extend past the vehicles that are queuing there today in the through and left turn lane. So anybody that wants to make a right will not have to wait for those cars to clear the cycle. So it's an operational improvement, and it will help the queue slightly, but mostly operational. Same level of service overall at the intersection, so it's not a huge improvement for capacity, but it's really an operational. Let me go to the next.
Just to clarify, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that's all within existing right-of-way, so we don't need to acquire any right-of-way to do that improvement there.
So do you coordinate with the state highway administration and they approve that extension? Is that where you're at with this?
Yes, that's correct. The state and the county have both approved all of the
Okay.
improvements that I'm going to show you, yes. Now, they've approved them conceptually, so we will have to come in with final design plans to go through all the approval process, but this conceptual level has been approved, yes.
Bennett Road in particular will have county approval as well because of the county road intersection with the state road.
Correct. The second improvement, 32 at Progress Way, today is signalized. This intersection will be mostly impacted by the corporate park. It'll be the access to the industrial. It's signalized today, but in order to improve progression along 32, to have cars moving quickly, we have offered to do what we call a Maryland T. Not sure if anybody's familiar with the Maryland T concept. So it will allow, it'll still be signalized, but the southbound Maryland 32 will not have to stop. Except for pedestrians.
So there'll be a signal there that a pedestrian could push the button and they'll get a red light so that they, stop traffic so they can cross.
Right. So this will improve the level of service at the overall intersection, but it will also improve the queue, because what we can do is give more time to the side street because we're not stopping southbound. And then those people, the northbound folks on 32 will stop. A left can come out of Progress, and then it has a merge lane. So then it will merge in with the southbound traffic.
I have a question about, at the end of Progress, isn't there a commercial area that's going to be developed there also?
Yes.
It
Oh,
would
well,
show no
and,
problem.
you mean on our property? Yes, yes, that's the proposed industrial park, corporate park. So this improvement, as Jackie mentioned, is predominantly related to that site, the industrial park site.
And just to be clear, you said commercial, it's industrially zoned, just to be clear. So it'll be,
Isn't there a commercial aspect of, I thought there was,
The industrial park allows for some commercial uses. I was just commenting on the zone itself.
are they planning on having some commercial in there?
The plan is to develop it as an industrial park, which is what you see similarly developed at Liberty Exchange on Route 26 with the Basta Pasta. So it's a industrial flex with commercial as well.
The only reason I bring this up is, I remember seeing this a long time ago when I was on the planning
Yes,
commission before.
yes. I believe that you were part of the planning commission iteration where it was proposed to be commercially zoned. It ultimately was zoned I-1 industrially, so it can develop with an industrial park, which has a commercial component to it, but it is industrially zoned. But I do know what you're referencing, yes.
And I'm much more in favor of the commercial, because that helps the people that live right back there to be able to utilize that easily. To me, it was really nice having a nice mixture of all around that area.
There will be a nice mix. We can only do what we can do with our zone. We're not proposing to rezone the property, just to be very clear.
No, I'm not-
But
Yeah.
there will be a nice commercial mix. If you're familiar with that Liberty Exchange, that's a similar product, and that it has a very nice blend of the commercial component that the adjoining residences can utilize as well.
I want to be a little clear on that, though, because an industrial park allows for particular uses, but this being so far removed from the main corridors of 32 and 26, it won't necessarily have the same retail components like you would see at Liberty Exchange. So I just want to set expectations appropriately. Yeah. It's just market, right?
Okay.
Okay, and then the next improvement, 32 at London Town. So coming out of London Town on a Saturday, obviously there's some queue there. So what we looked at doing here is just changing the phasing of the traffic signal. So today, it's the side streets are what we call split phased. So that means that one side stops, it has a red light while the other side goes. Then that side stops, lets the other side go, so they're not concurrent. We've done some auto turns and to show that trucks can do this if we make them concurrent. So when we do that and allow the side streets to operate at the same time, we can give more time to that movement because they can go concurrently. So it's going to reduce that queue. It reduces the queue on a Saturday. It's still, it's 512 feet under background and future conditions. This project adds no length to that queue because no one's coming out of that road for all of the Beatty property. But it does reduce it to 439 feet just by making that phasing change.
Jackie, I'm going to go back one slide. I apologize. 6, yes. And since you guys were out there doing the traffic, you probably noticed this, that there are times in the day on 32 as you travel south where, good for Chick-fil-A, there is, the traffic backs up, almost to where this photograph starts to get in and out of the Chick-fil-A. By allowing the traffic, this Maryland T, that traffic to just continue south, what sort of exacerbation do you have taking place there? Because I'm concerned about people coming down 32 at speed, and that corner, we've already had, I think, 1 traffic death and a couple of other pretty serious accidents at that bend just because, high school kids, I guess they're texting or something, I don't know. What is your opinion on that? Because that frankly, that's probably one of the worst spots in the whole area is that, and again, good for Chick-fil-A. I mean, we've all been there. So what are your thoughts on that and the traffic coming into that at speed?
So by allowing the southbound to not stop at this intersection, it's going to improve progression along this corridor.
Okay.
So you're not going to have the amount of queues that you have today. It's going to be lessened. And then allowing these folks, we've looked at site distance, the state has asked us to look at site distance and all of those things for this intersection to make this Maryland T work.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So this was London Town we talked about. We're going to do phasing changes there. And then the site access, I just want to talk about a little bit. This is not traffic mitigation, but I want to talk a little bit about the design here. So this is what Bennett Road looks like today in the area where the proposed access to the subject site is going to be. And then my next slide shows how it's going to look with the site access there.
What is the speed limit on that road? 40?
I'm going to defer.
I think it's 40.
I think it is too. There's a sign up that is electronic, and if you hit 35, it blinks at you.
So this intersection, obviously frontage improvements are being proposed along the entire frontage, so it's going to be wide and half-section improvements all the way down, sidewalk along the frontage all the way down, and a bypass lane. For folks that want to turn left into the site, there will be a bypass for those vehicles that want to continue through to go around.
And the entrance into the site is 2 lanes in, 2 lanes out?
1 lane out, 1 lane in. Now, I know there was some discussion about, this being a single access to 156 townhomes. The average daily trips for these age-restricted townhomes is 476. That's trips, that's not cars. So remember that if a car goes out and then it comes back, it's 2 trips. So it's 476 trips. We would typically look for a second access if we get above 1,500. There are many projects that are, 800 townhomes in a single access. So this is relatively low. The existing ADT along Bennett today is 5,260. So this is going to add 476 to that. Now, all of our calculations show that this is an A-level service. It shows no queue for the left turns in, but from a safety standpoint, the county suggested that we do this bypass lane. So the developer has agreed to do that.
So is the main reason you don't want another access out other than this is because you're afraid it's just going to be a cut-through?
No, not so much as a cut-through, so it's really in response to feedback that we were getting both from the community and the county that we should limit our access to the road. So we just proposed
We have a
the
lot of
single
people in
access.
Bennett that would argue that point. They're concerned about the increased traffic on Bennett because there's only one access,
But
and that's Bennett.
You'd have the same number of access.
Right.
Oh, you're saying another access somewhere other than to Bennett?
yes.
Yeah, so yes, the answer to your first question then is, yes, the concern about the cut-through traffic is what's driving the access only going to Bennett, whether it was 1 access or 2 access to Bennett. Yeah, right.
Richard, and I don't mean to talk past you, join in. I have the same opinion. I mean, I live right here. I came up Bennett today. My thought is that if we did provide that second access, it might produce some relief to the traffic going down Bennett, because not only would the people from this community go out to London Town, but guys like me who would be cutting through to the safe, I would cut through to get to the Safeway and all those services, and not go all the way up to 32. And so as we continually talk about the traffic in this area, and we're looking for using secondary roads as auxiliary traffic collectors, David, I don't know, and I don't mean to put Commissioner Rothschild in a bad spot, and I'm sure there's some people here who would have some some, other comments that would probably be contrary to mine. My thought is that I'm already going up and down Bennett. If you give me another way through, I might not go all the way up Bennett, and so it actually takes traffic off, at least a portion of Bennett, if we allow people to cut through here. Now, then the issue becomes, well, so how are you gonna slow down Pete Lester as he cuts through this community? And so traffic calming and all that kind of stuff. And so, like Jeff used to say, this is all about choices. And I don't disagree with you in allowing that one point at least to allow people to move through there, including the people in that community, because that takes the traffic, at least some of it, off of the corner of 32 and Bennett. So I don't disagree with you. I think it's a half a dozen one, six of another. If we're saying they're going to be 156 units here, what's the best way to disperse that traffic? We're forcing it all out onto Bennett right now.
Well, and the other thing that bothers me here a little bit is that if that's the single access to this community, and we only have 2 lanes, you have delivery trucks, you've got DoorDash, you name it, going in and out of there, and you only have 1 lane in and 1 lane out. It just seems like that whole access area should be wider. You have, anything that turns in and out of there. What's the density of traffic on Bennett Road per day?
5,260,
5,260 cars per day.
yes. And this site
That
would,
seems like an awful narrow driveway for a
Now-
156 unit development.
coming in and out of the driveway would be 476 trips throughout the day.
I know that, I understand that.
The width.
I'm just saying the width of it just seems so narrow in today's standards. We're talking, I don't want to categorize anybody, but I'm doing by what I've seen. I live next to Carroll Lutheran Village. It takes more than 1 lane for a lot of people to turn into there and out. And that just seems like an awful narrow driveway.
Well,
Because all these delivery trucks now aren't mini trucks.
No.
They're Amazon trucks or monsters, and turning in and out of there and
Yeah.
waiting for 5,200 cars.
So that road is proposed at 30 feet wide, which would give you a 15-foot lane in each direction.
Yes, sir.
You would normally see 11 to 12 feet width. So it'd be wider than kind of a standard lane. Obviously, we would have the same concerns as regards people's ability to get in and out. We're not trying to make something that's unduly narrow or anything like that.
understand
We
that. I
feel
just
like it's
think we should
a
bring it up.
well-designed entrance, so.
And I'd like to jump back just to some of the access point concerns that Mr. Lester raised, because I think we're looking at it from one perspective, whereas the other perspective is people cutting through and then getting onto Bennett from the south.
Right.
And so that's one of the community concerns and county concerns that were addressed by making this the point of access for the residential component. And Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, but if this road layout were approved, there would be a no outlet sign here as well on this access, which would eliminate any through traffic, both customers and otherwise, trying to get to that inner industrial park setting, because we were trying to, again, in response to a lot of the community concerns, eliminate additional traffic onto Bennett. The additional traffic being those people filtering through to get to those businesses and or filtering back out onto Bennett from that portion of the development.
Right.
So that was a strong part of the consideration in the one access point here, was to limit it to that retirement village, just the 156 units there.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So Jackie didn't include this as part of her presentation, but I'll ask you to stay up here in case there are any questions on this. Mr. Beecraft did introduce, when he kind of went through the overlay of the plan, the overflow parking areas. David, I'm not sure if you're able to pull the overall view back up at all. I'm sorry, I'm tasking
Yes,
you with.
of course.
Well, I'll keep talking while you pull that up. So, as the commission is aware from the staff report, there is a parking space requirement of 2 spaces per unit with overflow guest parking accommodations. So, as someone asked during the presentation, I believe Mr. Soyson, these individual units are designed with a 2-car garage and 2 spaces in the driveway, excuse me. In addition to that, so that at 4 spaces per unit, that puts this development with a proposed 624 spaces. We then additionally have shown 3 overflow guest parking areas, I believe with a total of 38 additional spaces. And then in addition to the 3 overflow and guest spaces, there will of course be the community clubhouse parking. We anticipate that that community clubhouse will not be a 24-hour operation as well, just, for your understanding of how that will operate. And so that parking will be based on the capacity of that. Right now, I think we're showing 34 spaces, but obviously that will have to be finalized once the actual capacity for that structure is finalized. So in total, we are showing 696 spaces on the plan in front of you. The space requirement for 156 units alone, not counting guest overflow, is 312. So this has been designed with anticipating the need for guests or overflow parking in the event that someone has a party and needs spaces for that they cannot all fit in the driveway. Obviously, the units are designed to accommodate the cars associated with the residents of the unit plus some guests as well, but obviously, we all know that people are going to have parties and things and need that overflow space. So this has been designed with all of that in mind. If there are any questions about parking, though, it's possible Jackie can answer them or I can answer them.
Any? No. Okay. I think we would go to the public comment, but is it possible to take a short recess before we do that? I anticipate some questions that may take time.
Sure, I think that would be fine. You want to take about a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right.
Used to stand.
10 minutes. Okay, we'll be back.
I can stand. I probably will, just because I do.
Time. are you ready for us to do public comment?
Yes, and we're happy to answer any additional questions that,
Okay.
are raised during that period as well, and circle back at the end if needed to clarify any issues.
Okay, thank you. Before I open it up for public comment, I just want to reiterate our policy. To have an orderly meeting, please adhere to the following rules. Speakers must have signed in to make public comment. Speakers must talk into microphone to facilitate audio and video recording. Comments will be strictly limited to 3 minutes session per speaker. Citizen testimony is not a question and answer session. Questions may be directed to staff after the meeting. If any individual fails to comply with these rules, I, as the commission chair, may call the person out of order and may require him or her to leave the meeting. So with that, thanks, Mike, I open it up for public comment.
State your name.
Hello, my name is Madison Ehrenberger, and I'm here today to talk about the reasons I think you shouldn't build this neighborhood. One reason I think you shouldn't build this neighborhood is because of the animals. You would hurt the environment and ecosystem that they live in. There are 2 animals in particular that I would like to talk about.
Can we adjust the microphone? It's hard to hear.
Yes, it is.
It's
Oh.
on.
Just can't hear.
Thank you.
Those animals are the red foxes and a bunch of turtles. If you build a new neighborhood over there, then you will hurt both species. Another reason is the school. If you build a neighborhood there, then when people move in, they will most likely have kids, and those kids would go to the closest school. For elementary kids, that would be Freedom Elementary and Eldersburg Elementary School. I go to Freedom Elementary, and I know that the school is already overpopulated, and if more students come here, there would be no room. And although I do not go to Eldersburg Elementary, I do know that if more kids go there, there would still be no room. The final reason is that it would disrupt the people who already live here, because when you are building, it will make it hard to concentrate. These are all the reasons I think you should stop building. I also have a signed petition with 81 people against the building. Thank you.
Thank you.
How do you deal with petitions? Do they formally accept a petition? How do they deal with petitions?
Okay. Any other public comment?
Yes, hi. I live at Bennett Road, 1700. So I know that you guys gonna open an entrance right in front of my house. So I do not like that because of our religion. So it's gonna be really bad for our whole family. So I disagree about the entrance at at Bennett Road.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Any response to what you've heard?
Just in very brief follow-up, which was my failure to say at the beginning, but this entire site has been designed with the maximum preservation of the environmental features here. Even the alignment of Georgetown Extended is designed with one stream crossing. Had it been relocated, it could have had to cross twice. So everything has been designed to preserve as much of the environmental features as possible and as required by the county code. And as I think you all are aware, there's the proposed overlook development of 55+ will not impact the school capacity.
Right. Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And I believe you're here for the next one.
Yeah, we
So-
are here for the next one, and we are requesting that this commission approve the elements at this stage in time, understanding that we will be back in front of you for a concept plan showing even more detail in regards to landscaping and the community center, for example, and all other aspects of the design. This step here in front of you today for Eldersburg Overlook is a preview, if you will, of concept that would then allow us to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals to request conditional use approval for a retirement village. And then, if that approval is granted, we would be back for concept review, which would, in the meantime, we'd also be addressing additional staff comments, and the plan would be even furthered. So we'd like to answer any other questions that have come up on the commission for us. I know there's been a lot of time today devoted to the traffic and access component. I think we anticipated that. And this site really has been designed both in response to county comments related to those items, and community concerns related to those items. I did just want to very quickly point out that the 55+ currently is designed with residentially privately owned streets. So opening that up to commercial or other through traffic kind of opens up a whole other situation that has not been planned for in what's been presented for you today. And we do anticipate that access that's provided will be more than wide enough to accommodate the vehicular traffic for the 156 units. We certainly do not want to develop a project that just isn't workable for the citizens that live there. So I believe that width has actually been increased over a few rounds of review as well to make sure that that's overly accommodated for. So if there are any questions, our whole team is here and happy to answer those, but we are here today asking for an action item for this to be, I'm not sure exactly what the terminology is, but approved such that we can proceed to Board of Zoning Appeals and then return to you for a concept level review.
Okay.
Thank you.
We did talk briefly with Secretary Daley just about possibly mitigating some traffic in and out of there specifically for the residents only. So that may be something that we talk to the county about in the future. Often communities have their own access to get in and out of there with a card or a gate of some kind. So that may be something that could help mitigate the traffic going on to Bennett, and then, but restricted to the residents.
Can I just ask, just to clarify, you're talking about for the ones that we've indicated as emergency access?
Correct.
Those would somehow be gated with the ability?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. That would be acceptable to us. We wouldn't have an opposition to that, I wouldn't think.
Yeah.
I would ask, just because we had a comment from a citizen, the location that we're showing on Bennett, you've taken into account the slope, the curve of the road, and locationally, is there a better place to put the entrance than where you've located it? Then, because again, I just want you to address their concerns. Is there another place to put it that would be better or optimal for? I know it'd be better for them if you moved it, but is there a better place to put it than where you put it?
I don't think so. We looked at it for sight distance and things like that, the ability to get in and out. One of the things with regard to the access, if it wasn't clear, we've put an acceleration and deceleration lane at the entrance. We've also provided the bypass, but as it relates to the location, we have to look at sight distance.
Yep.
And that's the location that we came up with that seems to work the best.
Okay.
I still have a concern about the width of the entrance onto Bennett Road. I just think that should be, you have the real estate there to make it wider. I don't see any reason to not mitigate that right now and commit to that to be wider for trucks pulling in, people going out, people trying to make left-hand turns going out, where a right-hand turn could just move one out to the right. Just think it's awful narrow.
Again, we did respond. We didn't go back and check exactly, but we think we had a comment from engineering about the width, and we widened it to the 30 feet. If a couple more feet would make a difference, we probably have room to do that. But we do feel this is, as I say, a well-engineered access point, and would anticipate the types of vehicles that would be coming and going from the site.
I don't disagree with the access point. I just think it would make it much handier and safer for the residents who are moving out on a 5,000 plus road intersection.
Can you be a little clearer as to, are you thinking if there was a third lane?
Yeah, I think there should be a turn lane going out to the right that would allow people to come out. If people were stopped to move to the left, it would just help. Larger trucks now, a lot of the Amazon trucks now are larger trucks turning in. You know, I live next to a retirement village, and I see all these things happen. And they happen for a reason. And
So-
just more width sure helps people.
Sure. And so which we're not here to talk about today, but I'll use it just as an example. In the industrial district, our flex buildings that have trucks coming and going from them are 35 feet wide. So this is 30 feet. So, I mean, we'd only be talking about a couple feet in difference. I don't think it's about so much adding a lane one way or the other, but perhaps some additional width, if that would, I think that would address your concern about somebody maybe swinging wide or something like that. But if we have, you know, semi-vehicles that come and go, 56-foot long vehicles out of a 35-foot wide entrance, and these are 30 feet, you know, again, I think a couple of feet maybe could make a difference. But we do believe that it would meet any requirement the county would put forward as far as from an engineering perspective at the 30 feet, so.
I mean, you just have so much real estate there that you can do a lot of things. And I've seen where on a couple of retirement villages I've seen have a garden spot in between, where you have 2 lanes here and 2 lanes here and a garden spot in between. It just gives people a much better area for sight distance, looking left, looking right. I'm just concerned about the safety of the people going in and out of there.
Well,
And on the road and people turning in.
we will have another stab at it. Today, we do have action that we need to take because this will go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So I will entertain a motion.
So the action that was required was centered around the cluster plan, right?
It's, if you look here.
For conditional use.
So, according to Chapter 158.161, you need to make a determination on 3 things. The density, the exterior design, and the site layout. That's what's required in order for them to proceed to the BZA.
Yeah.
Should they be 3 separate motions? Or just one?
You can,
Just one.
you can incorporate it into one.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll take a stab at it, make a motion that the Planning and Zoning Commission per Chapter 158.161 approves the site development plan and traffic study and determinations regarding density, exterior design, and site layout for Eldersburg Outlook Retirement Village S-230027.
Second it.
I think you need to,
Conditional use.
yes.
Oh, and, okay, knowing that the code requires commission's review and determinations prior to a hearing before the Board of Zoning Appeals with a request for conditional use for a retirement village. Forgot that part. Okay. Thank you, Janice.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstains? Okay. You are approved to go to BZA.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll stay seated up here because we're also the next item on the agenda, but we look forward to coming back before you for this plan for concept.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, moving on to number 9, special report, Reservoir Run. So, Kelly, do you want to reintroduce, or David?
Okay, perfect. So David Beecraft again, here before you with the last project on the agenda this morning. This is another special report for a similar property just south of the one that we were just discussing. This is Reservoir Run P-23-0056. With me are the same representatives, but I will let them introduce themselves again.
Thank you. Good morning. Kelly Schaefer Miller. Again, on behalf of St. John Properties, we have with us the same team that was just before you for the last presentation as well. But Tom, if you want to state your name again.
Sure. I'm still Tom Pelin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so this project, as stated, is before you as a special report, so not quite a concept plan, but they are looking to cluster the proposed residential lots. And instead of waiting until concept plan review before the Planning Commission to do that, they had made a request to come before the Planning Commission a little earlier as a special report to get that authorization from the Planning and Zoning Commission. So a lot of this is going to overlap with what I just stated, again, because with the nature of this development as a whole, there's a lot of overlap between each of these developments. But I will try to remove some of those items that are have already been stated. So the property in question is really the southernmost, which is within the Beatty property 4 parcel. And this piece of land is roughly 21 acres and is also undeveloped, and it is comprised of mostly open meadow. So this, again, this rendering here is a little older, but it still captures a pretty accurate representation as to how this property looks. There are no streams or 100-year floodplain designations on the property, but there are some non-tidal wetland areas, which I'll show you as we get to the actual plan review of this. From the southern property line, so looking at where it butts up against the existing residential development, the property does slope downwards into the property. So as you get away from that development, you're walking downhill. And the subject property and all adjoining property, similar to the one we just discussed, is within the existing / final planning water and sewer service area. And so again, just to show this snippet, so this is the entirety of what's proposed for the Beatty property. Again, we are only looking at this southernmost piece here. And so bordered by Long Meadow subdivision, so that subdivision that wraps around this parcel, that is or was recorded back in 1960s. The property shares an R20,000 zoning district designation with all adjoining properties. The southernmost subdivision was developed with single-family residences on lots that average roughly 23,000 square feet. With that discussion we just had with the last project, we know that a square foot, an acre is roughly 43,000 square feet. So this is roughly half-acre lots in that existing subdivision. So included with that existing subdivision, there were areas of future access onto the subject property from Long Meadow Drive as well as Rolling View Drive. So it was always the intention, at least back in the 1960s when this southernmost development was recorded, to have future roadway connections to this subject property. So Similar descriptions as far as history as it relates to the town hall meetings that were discussed for this. Similar concerns were raised as it relates to the previous property that we just discussed in relation to how this will increase, or will have potential adverse impacts on environment as well as traffic in the area. Again, this did go before the Planning and Zoning Commission as a whole for the Beatty property to discuss just a general idea and provide feedback as to the development. With this subject property, during that meeting, it was proposed a cluster subdivision of single-family residences. That is what's currently still proposed now, so nothing has changed in that regard. There has been some minor changes to the access points since that meeting. So with that original meeting, there was an access point which extended this roadway all the way up to this road connection here. As you can see now, that is no longer the case. This is going to be a cul-de-sac road and will not make that connection. But this connection shown here and this connection shown here to the existing subdivision was always shown. So on November 27, 2023, a concept subdivision plan was submitted to the county and distributed for technical review. The developer proposes to create 34 individual single-family residential lots. And again, they are looking to cluster these lots. And so from our discussion we had a few months back about clustering, they're looking to make the lots smaller than what would typically be allowed in this zoning district. And then that area that they would not have to put in the lot will be put into an open space area, which will be utilized by the residents of the subdivision only, not by the entirety of the public. And so along with that, there is a section in our code, chapter 155.036, which calls out certain regulations that are required for cluster subdivisions, which I've included in the report the entirety for those cluster subdivisions within a residential zoning district, which this property is. And what I plan to do is talk about each one and how what they're showing complies with that. So the first one is that the total number of lots that you're allowed to have in a cluster subdivision shall not exceed the number that would be permitted for the zoning district based on the gross area of the parcel or tract being subdivided. So in the cluster subdivision, even though they're creating smaller lots, they're not getting any more lots than they would typically be allowed. So the property in question is 20.71 acres. That equates to roughly 902,000 square feet. If you do the math on that, being our 20,000 zoning district, that means your minimum lot size is 20,000 square feet. You would be permitted to have 45 lots. What they're currently showing on this is 34 lots. So they are under that maximum requirement, so they comply with that. The next requirement is that individual lots shall be a minimum of 20,000 square feet in the R40,000 district, 10,000 square feet in the 20,000 district, and then 7,500 square feet in the R10,000 zoning district. So this zoning district is R20,000, which means that the minimum lot size that they would able to put a property is 10,000 square feet. What they're currently proposing shows lots that range in size from just shy of 12,000 square feet up to, again, just shy of 18,000 square feet. So this exceeds that minimum requirement size of 10,000 square feet. And setbacks for that are shown as being 35 feet from the front, 12 feet from the side, and 40 feet from the rear. So the next requirement that they would have to abide by is the open space. So the land derived from the reduction of lot size shall be provided and maintained as open space or recreational area for joint use by the residents of the cluster subdivision, or offered to the county as agreed to by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So with this, the total acreage of land derived from clustering, again, is the difference from that 20,000 square foot required minimum lot size to the proposed lot size. This calculates to roughly 4.8 acres. an open space tabulation on the cover sheet shows roughly 6 acres that they're proposing as open space. So they are exceeding that minimum amount. The second part of that was as it relates to who is getting that open space, who's going to own and maintain it. At the discretion of the Planning Commission, it could be offered to the county in talks with various county departments. There is no interest in the current open space parcel. So it's recommended that they be for the joint use of residents of the cluster subdivision and not have county ownership. So the next requirement is that cluster subdivisions must be served by public water and sewage facilities. This will be proposed, or it is proposed to be served by public water and sewer. Sewer lines for this development will connect to the existing sewer lines on the Beatty property. So there is an existing sewer line that runs on the northern property, if my mouse wants to work, which is shown here. So they're going to make connections to the sewer line for that, as well as there's some sewer lines in the southern subdivision as well that they're going to connect to. And the same can be said for water. So with other developments, there's going to be water that's shown in the future Georgetown Boulevard extended roadway. Okay. And as well as in the subdivision to the south. So they're making various connections to water and sewer facilities, so that way there's continuity in the system. So that's something that we look for within the Bureau of Utilities at the county. So the next requirement is that common open space shall not be less than 15% of the gross acreage of any tract submitted for cluster subdivision. So the common open space that they are proposing, again, is right around 6 acres, is greater than the code required 15% of gross acreage of the tract. So that equates to right around 3 acres. So they are exceeding that requirement. The secondary to that, a maximum of 50% of the required open space may be steep slopes, streams, ponds, watercourses, and floodplains. The calculated area of steep slopes, streams, ponds, watercourses, and floodplains totals 50% of the code required open space. So they are right at that requirement. So they're not exceeding it, but they are within compliance of that requirement. A minimum of 10% of the required open space, or 1 1/2 acres, whichever is greater, shall be suitable for active recreational use and may not exceed a grade of 3%. So for open space suitable for recreational use and not having a grade exceeding 3%, they are showing 1.7 acres, which exceeds the 1.5 acre minimum. And I'm gonna go to the next slide, which shows where those, what we call active open space areas are. So the open space areas that would be for active recreational use are shown in green. So in this area here, as well as this area down here. And the rest of the areas that you see with a hatch symbol, that is the rest of the open space area. So this open space here, it wraps around to over here. There is a small area of open space here, as well as up here, which wraps around to connect to this area up here. So the next requirement is that a cluster subdivision receiving TDRs may increase density at 2 TDRs for every 10 lots. So I'll just mention there are no TDRs, which is the transfer of development rights. There's no TDRs associated with this subdivision, so that section doesn't really apply to this. And then the last one, in order to be eligible for clustering, all lot yield from the entire property shall be included on the preliminary subdivision plan. So they've shown what they're showing. Although they can go up to 45, they're showing 34, and then the lots will not be further subdivided past that. So as mentioned, there are going to be various access points to the proposed subdivision. They are showing new roadways which will connect to the existing southern neighborhood. So this roadway here, shown as Road A, which will be named, connects to Long Meadow Drive, right in between these two parcels here. And this is one of those access points that was shown on the existing record plat through these two pieces of land. Another access point is shown as this right here. Again, between two parcels, this was another reserved area for future access. And the last roadway that they're connecting is Road B, again, which will be named, which will connect the future roadway here to, again, this other roadway, which is Georgetown Boulevard. So Georgetown Boulevard is a planned major street, so that is going to be developed with the entirety of the Beatty property. And this will make that connection to that, so that way you don't have to go through that neighborhood to exit the community. You can go out through Georgetown, which will connect up to Progress Way and head out that way. So the proposed road network on site, again, includes the cul-de-sac for Road A, which will terminate right here. And Road A will be a county-maintained road, such as Road B and such as Georgetown Boulevard. So I mentioned with the last development, all of those roads will be privately owned and maintained. All of the roads shown here are going to be publicly owned by the county and maintained by the county. There are a few lots that are going to have different access points. So there are 3 lots that are proposed at the end of Long Meadow Drive. So Long Meadow Drive will be extended, and there's going to be 3 lots that just have direct access to that. This extension of Long Meadow Drive will not connect to Georgetown. So you can see there is a terminus of the roadway here. So the only access to Georgetown will be from this future Road B. There will be 3 lots that are shown here that have direct access to that Road B, and then the remaining lots will have access to Road A here. And sidewalk is proposed throughout the internal road network of the subdivision, and it will, so I don't believe there's any sidewalk on this southern subdivision, but the rest of the quote-unquote Beatty property will have sidewalk connectivity. So as mentioned with the last project and with that last PowerPoint as well, the same traffic impact study was had for this development. So it was all one cohesive traffic impact study. So it was the same ideologies as to how that would be mitigated as that last project. So I'm not going to get too much into details with that, since we had that great PowerPoint that gave insight into that. So this subdivision, it was subject to citizen involvement at the December 2023 Technical Review Committee meeting. There were 3 citizens that were in attendance, 2 which spoke regarding the subdivision and asked questions regarding the cemetery on the property. So as mentioned, there is a cemetery on the Beatty property that is up in this industrial portion. And there's questions as to if there is another cemetery located on the southern portion of the Beatty property. And so that was raised at that technical review committee meeting. After the meeting, a phone call was received from a citizen who voiced concern over traffic generated from this development. A secondary phone call from another citizen was received, and they shared concerns about the proximity of the staging area to their property, as well as the school capacity, again, the cemetery locations, excuse me, and then the proposed roadways near their property. And then since then, I believe that there have been some emails received by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and any that we received have been forwarded your way in that regard as well, just relating to these 2 developments. So the subject property is within a priority funding area and designated growth area. The proposed land use is consistent with the 2018 Freedom Community Comprehensive Plan as stated by the Bureau of Comprehensive Planning. The project is subject to the provisions of the concurrency management, which is Chapter 156, and will be tested prior to presentation to the Planning Commission as a preliminary plan. This cluster plan proposal meets the conditions of Chapter 155. And so staff and the developer are requesting a determination from the commission authorizing the proposed to cluster the plan of subdivision. So following that determination, the project will continue through the subdivision process. They will look to address additional county comments, and it will be brought back before the Planning and Zoning Commission as a concept plan. So we're not quite at concept level yet, but again, this was requested to be brought before you for that determination of authorization for cluster. And so I do have some pictures as it relates to how the property currently looks. So this is at the existing, there's an existing driveway on the Beatty property. So this is just looking at the existing neighborhood from that driveway. You can see there's vegetation that's there, but also you can see some of the houses that's there as well. And then going to the next slide. So this is Long Meadow Drive. So this is where it will be extended. And again, this is Long Meadow Drive looking out, so where it will be extended. This is looking at one of the access points between the two houses. And this is looking at another access point between two houses. So this one is on Long Meadow Drive, and this one is on Rolling View Drive. And I'll mention that these two pictures are from Google Maps. So there might not be as accurate as some of the others. And so if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, as I'm sure the representative for the project.
Open space. I'm hoping that the county says they don't want to fool with this as far as open space, but that's to be determined. So if the county rejects the open space areas for maintenance or oversight, what's the procedure then? Because open space for the people who are adjacent, the lots that are adjacent to the open space areas might be very interested. The rest of that community could not be interested in all. So what's the procedure here? Is it bonded? Who takes care of the maintenance of it? If it's overgrown with Johnson grass, who takes care of that? That's what I'm sort of concerned about here.
Sure. So the open space, so the county has no interest in it at this time. So it will be owned in joint by the residents, which is typically done by a homeowners association. Once that's done, it's handled just as if it's any other privately owned property. So there may be a covenants and restrictions that's recorded with that. That's not required by the county. But if there's a maintenance issue on that, then that would be a private matter, such as any other property which may not be mowing as frequently as some of its neighbors. Once it's privately owned and maintained, the county does not typically get involved in that.
So
that's pretty loose.
From a St. John perspective,
I don't get that.
we don't typically do residential development. That said, we've got about 3,000 residential units in our portfolio. So in other words, we've been involved in mixed-use communities before, where we've been the master developer, which we would kind of view this as we're playing the role or acting in the role of the master developer. We'll typically put some kind of a covenant in place that if the HOAs don't do what they need to do, we'll go in and keep things good, because we, as St. John Properties, are long-term investors. Even though we'll have lots for sale here, our industrial park, our flex buildings, we will own that for basically ever, right? I mean, that's what we do. We're long-term investors. So if the development around us starts looking bad, that impacts our ability to lease and things like that. So again, we'll put some kind of controls in place, usually in the form of a declaration that the residential projects will be subject to that, but we'll look to the HOA first to do their job, and if they don't, then we come in. We have a couple large communities in Maryland where we've done that. We've been able to implement that very well, and generally it's worked. So yeah.
So there's no bonding required for the open space areas that things get out of control, then it's up to you as the oversight of the HOA?
Well, as the developer.
Run me through that,
basically.
please.
As the developer, right, we would put a set of covenants in place that would cover the entire project, right, all 4 of the areas.
Right.
And then we maintain control of that, but we would have the HOAs, apparently Clark's going to talk about this too. We would have the HOA set up, and generally it would be the responsibility of that entity to take care of it. But because we have an interest in things looking good, if it's not looking right, we'll do what we need to do to make sure that things are good. Whether that comes in the form of we would then lien the HOA or whatever it is. But again, we don't just stand, but we're not going to develop and walk away. We're going to be there long-term, and we have an interest in it looking good. As far as bonding, if you're referring to like bonds with the county, I'm not aware that those would be requirements other than during, the grading process and things like that. But once it's up, established community, we really would just pay attention to it. As St. John Properties, I don't know how familiar you are with our company, we're real estate investors. We do development work, but at the end of the day, we have our own in-house leasing teams, our own house property management, and things like that. A project that we're working on in Baltimore County, where we actually have a residential developer that's doing the single-family attached and detached. We got a call from one of the residents the other day that said, hey, that part of it's not mowed. We talked to our property manager, Leanne, immediately, and she's like, we'll get out there and we'll take care of it. So again, we have an interest in it. We want to see the lots be able to sell, but long-term, we want the project to look good, just generally.
I'm Clark Schaefer. I'm Kelly Schaefer Miller's partner. And I represent St. John's here today.
Now I got to pay him too.
Now you got to pay. Yeah, you got to pay now. I talk. And that's the only reason I'm up here, frankly. In answer or response to Mr. Robertson's question, first of all, there's hundreds of these out there. This is a standard process. And to my knowledge, there's no experience where they fail or there's big problems, because otherwise I think the county might put a bonding requirement in or do something. But of course, if you put a bonding requirement in, then the next question is, well, who's going to administer that? And then the second point I'd like to make is that this property, this HOA property, will simply be just like every other piece of property in Carroll County, except for the publicly owned properties, which are exempt from some of the rules. It'll be subject to all the same rules as every other property in terms of nuisances, et cetera. And in addition, in this case, it will be governed by a homeowners association, which will have a whole structure. You're familiar with it, where people participate on these boards and they govern it. They're required to have insurance. They collect dues. The only difference that I can see with this one is a good difference, which is, Tom just explained, this one will have an actual backup from somebody else, whereas usually in a neighborhood, it's just the HOA. And of course, mostly in these kind of cases, the maintenance obligations is simply to mow, and it's not major. It's not like you're taking over a stormwater management facility that requires technical resorts. So that's how they're governed, and it's sort of not perfect, but a tried and true system to deal with this open space when the county doesn't want it for obvious reasons. They don't want the headache. So,
thank you. Does that answer?
But I'm going to glom onto this for a second. And I don't want to cast aspersions to Tom or St. John's Properties. I mean, frankly, that assurance is only as good as your continued ownership, and y'all could at any time decide, to, become a merchant builder and just sell it to some other REIT, and so that's a good assurance. We'll bank on it, but it's only as good as your continued ownership. My issue really is, and it's a storied narrative on the commission here. David, if these common areas, if they're of no real use to the community, why aren't we just reforesting them? I mean, now if it's flat and an impromptu, soccer game can pick up, that's great. If there's going to be a blacktop out there where somebody could play a little volleyball or basketball, that's great. Otherwise, if there's some topography that makes it challenging to do any of that, why aren't we just reforesting it so that no one has to maintain it? Because then we totally get out of the issue of, it's 34 homes. Is it really worth it for those 34 homeowners to pay, $50 a month into an HOA to have a field that their kids really can't use because of the topography? Is it really worth it? And so that's my challenge here is as we look at this, there are these little pockets of community, areas. And because they're spread out all over creation, there's no real community use to it. And that's the frustrating part to me. So what is the topography of the larger? Is it something that we can actually, as a community, is that community going to actually enjoy those spaces, or is it just something that they have to maintain?
So, to answer your question as to is it worth it, honestly, it depends on who you ask. And it depends on how you're looking at this. So one of the main concerns, or I should say, one of the main draws of clustering is to lessen environmental impacts. So as I mentioned in my report, they are right at that 50% requirement. They can't exceed that, but they're right at that. And that's due to this lower end of the Beatty property being a lot of environmental features. Although there's no streams on the property, there are some wetlands associated with that. So this area shown here, all of this is wetland, which does encroach onto the property. This area over here is a wetland which encroaches on which is on the property. And within the residential zoning district, you do have that requirement of the recreational area, which again is shown in green on the screen. But anything beyond that, you have open space requirement, but as to what is in that open space requirement is entitled to that's outside of the open space or the active open space is up for debate. It's possible they could put plantings there. It doesn't, nothing in our code says explicitly that this open space has to be mowed or it has to be this, has to be that. The only additional requirement we have in our code for open space is the quote unquote active open space, which has that grade limitation of it. It has to be less than 3% grade.
Okay.
Jim, go for it.
Yes,
Good morning. Jim Mathias with Development Design Consultants.
Yes, sir.
And I believe I can answer your question, Mr. Lester. Of the area that David mentioned that isn't steep slopes, floodplains, stormwater management, of that area, 1.5 acres of that has to be active, what is considered active open space. And those are the green areas that you're seeing on that plan. And I will agree with you that the magnitude of this subdivision doesn't really support a very large amenity package that would be supported by an HOA of bigger size. The area that is not going to be active open space, we are actually looking at reforesting. But that 1.5 acres, right now, we haven't really considered much of an amenity package right there for the community. Based on what we've shown and what we're showing there, it's probably going to be some community gathering areas, some small walkways, that type of thing. But it'll be graded. It'll be mowed. It'll be flat. But it will not be forested. The other areas will be.
Okay.
Do you provide sir?
I'm sorry.
Do you provide the amenities for the walkways and all that as part of the plan, or is that up to the homeowners association?
Well, another great question. It can be initiated by the developer, and then once the HOA is established, they can embellish it as they choose.
So David?
I'll mention too, if they come back and they're showing walkways or a pavilion or a fire pit, anything like that, any type of improvement in the open space, then we at the county would bond for that.
Okay.
And it would, because it was approved with the plan, it would need to be shown and bonded for it.
That's what I was wondering about.
Yeah, I hear you.
Thank you, David.
We got there.
Yeah.
Michael?
Just a comment. We have 34 homes with 3 access points in this plan, and we had 156 homes with 1 access in the prior plan.
I agree. Doesn't make a lot of
So what's your point?
It says comment.
We hear that comment. A lot of, and I'm sure that Jim and Tom can speak more specifically to this, a lot of the access considerations given to this proposed subdivision were a result of county comments and county connectivity desires. I believe a lot driven by emergency service access, which has been part of the review for this so far, as well as having those existing plans in place on those old subdivision plats. So I'll let them speak more specifically, but that was a driving factor in those access points, which was also reviewed as part of the plan you looked at earlier this morning as well.
We received feedback from the community that they'd prefer that we not have the connection so that it could be a cut through. And we actually had conversations with the county about it multiple times. And this was the direction we received from the county, was that it needed to respect the access points that were set up initially in the original 1960 subdivision, as well as providing a connection to the extension of Georgetown. We had indicated previously and publicly that we'd be okay with different access scenario than the way that it's set up here, but this is where we've been directed as far as the county feedback that we received for the reasons that Kelly stated, so.
Understood.
Just-
I think those access points also have traffic signals, if I'm not.
No, no, there's no traffic signals.
don't?
Excuse me, no traffic signals.
Ultimately, if
No,
you,
well,
Rolling View, but Long Meadow,
Right.
that's
Oh,
coming
you
out.
mean-
At Liberty, okay.
Yeah, not within the subdivision.
No, right.
Okay, yeah.
Ms. Miller, just for some clarification, and I'll ask you so I get a straight answer.
I'll try.
Instead of your dad. He didn't hear that. In the covenants in the deed for each one of these lots, there are covenants in that deed that mention a homeowners association. So then there are covenants within that homeowners association that ties it to the deed. Is that right?
Essentially, yes. There's generally speaking a document of covenants, which are put on record. They may or may not be explicitly put in the deed, but they are referenced in the deed, and the deed is obligated to respect those covenants, and they become a part of the chain of title for that property that any property is obligated to. It all depends on the timeline, because as you can imagine, sometimes your third owner down the line from the property has purchased years after the covenants were put in place, right? So the logistics, but yes, generally speaking, you've outlined kind of how it works.
That covenant runs with the deed.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Richard? And nothing? Pete, Mike, Steve?
No. Answered all or asked all my questions.
Okay. Anything further from you all?
I appreciate David's staff report. I think it was very thorough. And we are, again, if there are any comments that are raised that we can answer the questions of, we're all here and happy to do that. Today, this review is really limited to the clustering request for this project. As David stated, we will be back before you for a concept review of this. This is a subdivision plat. So we are looking for guidance on the clustering because that ultimately guides the entire rest of our process. So that's why we wanted to be here for a special report. And I will point out, although I think that it's been the subject of recent presentations before this commission as well, that the code recognizes, and kind of the impetus for clustering is to minimize the potential environmental impacts and, any additional agricultural resource degradation of the property. That is why our code supports clustering, and the request made before you is to cluster in a way that complies with the code and is actually under the maximum allowable density for this project. So if there are any specific questions, like I said, that get raised during public comment, we're happy to respond to those. But if you don't have any at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I will open it up for public comment. If there is anyone who wishes to speak, please step up to the microphone. You're a quiet bunch today.
A lot of people here.
Yeah.
So that's good. Okay, I guess. Seeing none, then we do have action required on this.
I move we approve the plan, subject to chapter 155.036, and allow for clustering, and proceed to the concept review as shown.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. You are approved to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time this morning.
Okay.
You know, it always gets me that I have 90 acres of wetlands.
Thanks, David.
It's based on the total number
Yeah.
of acres and not the built where a lot. And they changed that, and I hate that.
It shouldn't be gross acreage,
That's
it should be usable.
That's the Primoff plan.
I agree.
That's the Primoff
So-
plan, and we have been
So
suffering.
the acre they
Yeah,
have,
we've been
I
suffering
think
from
it's
it ever
probably
since.
similar to the one right off of.
Boy, that
Yes,
great
we got field with grass.
Well, but the kids get out there and play.
You're gonna need to take a photograph.
What happens here?
Oh, well, one of my clients lives right there, so they do get out there and
I've
play.
enhanced the density by 10.
You just don't come at the right time.
Developers and the builders. Developers and the
Okay.
builders love it.
What's next?
All right,
You're going to be addressing the master plan.
Westminster annexation
Should have that as one of our
77.
working sessions.
Primoff,
Yes.
okay. We are moving forward.
developers down in that area.
Number 10, Westminster annexation, number 77, Covington Properties. Miss Weber, good to see you.
Long time no see. Yes, thank you, Chair. As you said, we have Westminster annexation number 77 of the Covington properties. With us today, we have Andrea Gerhard with the City of Westminster to answer any questions. There is no zoning waiver required for this annexation, so this is just an informational briefing to you all to collect any comments that you would like to relay to the county commissioners. So here's the annexation plat that was submitted to the county. In total, the annexation area is approximately 3.1 acres. It encompasses this entire property, as well as some road frontage on Old Westminster Pike. And again, here is a zoom out of the City of Westminster area. You can see we are inside the municipal growth area boundary. And using the roadway of Old Westminster Pike, we are contiguous to the existing corporate limits of the City of Westminster. Currently, this property is improved with a medical office building. As stated previously, this annexation totals 3.186 acres. Currently, the property is zoned C2 commercial and R10,000 residential in the county. The requested zoning going into the City of Westminster is B business and R10,000 residential. Because the zoning districts are similar in density and uses, there is no zoning waiver required. The designated land use for this property is commercial and suburban residential. This is taken from the City of Westminster's 2009 Community Comprehensive Plan. The property is currently in the existing sewer and existing water service categories. And as always, we send the transmittal out for comments. We received a comment from the Maryland Department of Planning explaining that they would like to see a zoning waiver requested. If you'll remember, we had a similar comment made by MDP with the previous annexation with the City of Westminster. And when we explained to them the county's point of view, how the uses are similar, and the commercial uses and the residential densities are similar, they agreed with us that a zoning waiver would not be required, but they still made this comment for this annexation. So planning staff, we are making a comment that the county does not support the use of public roadways to establish contiguity for the purposes of annexation. A more logical and effective approach would be to work with the adjoining property owners to create a contiguous block of privately owned land that can be annexed to create a more regular municipal boundary. That being said, the county acknowledges that state law does not require this, nor does it prohibit the use of roadways to establish contiguity. Since no zoning waiver is required for this annexation, the boundary as presented is sufficient. We are also recommending that the City of Westminster give public notice by posting the property prior to the date of the public hearing and notifying all adjoining property owners. And we are set to present to the county commissioners this Thursday, the 18th.
So how long a roadway can you make to establish continuity? 2 miles or?
As long as it's in the growth area. There's,
what I
as we stated, the state doesn't have any comments about it. They don't have any laws or regulation prohibiting it. But as stated, the county feels that it would be more sufficient to try and get these other adjoining properties to annex to kind of make it a more,
Contiguous.
yes.
Yeah.
I would call that common sense.
Yeah.
Well, since these are all privately owned and majority of them are residential, we can't, they come to the city to ask for annexation.
Right.
And since at this point they have not, we can't, we're going to move forward with this as presented. That's not saying that in the future we won't do this, but it is, being that they are residentially zoned properties and they all have to come forward for us. That's just not the case at this time.
So that is a state road,
It's a county road.
county road, okay, a county road.
And yeah, we
That's how,
sent the transmittal to our Public Works Department and they provided no comments, so.
okay, that makes sense.
And once again, annexation doesn't change anything with ownership, so it doesn't impact, their ability to maintain it or anything
Right.
like that.
Okay.
Does this impact fire, police service in any way that you have, people in, that it's not as continuous as it should normally be?
I'll let you address the.
Yeah, I don't believe so. It is something that is considered by our mayor and common council at the time in which it comes before them for public hearing. But there is an annexation plan that was submitted as part of this as a draft. And I don't believe that it does impact that, but I'm sorry, I don't have that information on.
Yeah, I'm just curious if you make a call for help, I mean, does it come in a more timely manner if it's all contiguous and no one has to look at the map and say, well, are they even in the city?
This is actually, I apologize, this property was part of an annexation agreement that was set up prior to annexation, and it does say that, according to the report that we provided, and we can look into this, to provide you a more answer, but the city would not be providing EMS services to this particular building as part of the annexation. So, and that might be part of the fact that it has been, it said that it was just so minimal to this particular, since it is a commercial property. And it said that it will not increase any residential population, and the nature of the uses is such that they do not anticipate many increases of calls. And that
It is currently being used as a medical office building, so annexing it is not going to, as I anticipate, not changing the use at all, just bringing it into the city.
Sure.
So it wouldn't be increasing any impacts.
So what's the net positive of bringing it into the city?
they're able to access our water.
I'm sorry?
They needed additional water for their endoscopy center, the new endoscopy
Okay.
center. So in order to do that, that's what drove this annexation.
Okay. So you can piecemeal annexation for water reasons or sewage reasons, septic?
Yes.
That is largely the main reason for annexations. Yeah. And it's in their municipal growth area, so.
Okay.
Any? No? Okay. Any public comment on this? Okay.
He had to go. The property owner was here, but was unable, he had another meeting to head to, so he was unable to stay. But he was here and obviously in support of this and was going to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. We have no action, right?
Right, correct.
Okay. All right. Number 11, Mr. Wagner.
Here's
I know.
Wagner.
I never noticed a price. Hello.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
We haven't seen you in a while, Price.
It has been a while. Not since the triennial update.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the 2024 spring amendment of our recently approved MDE Carroll County Water and Sewer Master Plan. So why are we amending the plan at this time? I skipped, there we go. In order to keep the plan as current as possible and to address and implement updates, the plan is eligible for amendments during the 2 years between triennial updates. These amendments occur during the spring and the fall cycle. This is the first one, and just so you know, we already have 3 on the potential agenda for fall. So you'll be seeing more amendments coming down the road. Amendments can be brought forward by either an individual property owner, by the town or system operators, by county staff, whether it's on my end or if it's on the utility side. So they also fall under system operator, however they are county staff. But also for a project to be permitted by the Maryland Department of the Environment, it must be listed within the water and sewer master plan within the service area. So we had 6 total amendments this go around. The first being part of Mount Airy to update their water service area and their estimated demands. Also for the city of Westminster to update their service area and the demands table. Again, same for Freedom. And then also for the city of Westminster, the sewer service area and the demands, the town of Hampstead sewer service area map, and finally the Freedom sewer service area map. Now, the town of Mount Airy, this is for what is known as the Twin Arch Mobile Home Park. And this property is actually outside of the corporate limits of the town of Mount Airy. They will not be annexed in. However, they do have, after testing, reports have been found, they have major issues of PFAS. So with the town working with MDE, they were asked to bring this mobile home park into the service area for water. This will approximately add 5,000 gallons to the existing final planning service area for water on this particular property. And also with this project, the funding stemmed towards the town of Mount Airy to actually upgrade their water system to help reduce PFAS is also sort of attached to this, bringing this mobile home park into the service area itself. For the city of Westminster, you'll see there's 2 parcels, and some of you may, when you see the map, this may look familiar. I came before you last year, or I'm sorry, 2 years ago, to actually remove these parcels from the water sewer service area, or at the time, the water service area. There was not sewer, because the previous owners were not going to develop the property. However, the property is since sold, and the current owners would like to develop the property, and you will see that in the map. However, they're looking to do potentially 19 units, and that'll be a total of 4,465 gallons. That'll be for both water and for sewer. And the 235 gallons per day per unit is actually the multiplier that the city of Westminster is able to use. The Freedom Service area for water is, well, for water and sewer, is to remove, one of them is to remove currently a current project, a very small section. It's called Harvest Creek, also known as the Zabel property. There is a portion, roughly 17 acres, that's in the southeast, that is going to be developed, that's zone conservation, and it's going to be developed accordingly. So roughly 5 homes will be on that. And with that being said, the developer realized if it was going to be developed on as for 5 units and conservation, then being on private well and septic is the better use of the facilities. So their request for that portion was to come out of the water and sewer service area for that small area. And then, for the Freedom, again, the Sykesville Development Corporation, this is known as Schoolhouse Overlook. They also looked at requesting to come out of the water service area, but however, stay in the sewer service area for that project. And then quickly, the town of Hampstead, this is, their request was for property to move from the future service area. So the demand is already in their future service area calculations, and move those into the priority service area as they're looking to develop in the foreseeable future. So all of these have gone forward. So the Mount Airy Planning Commission certified on February 26th that is consistent with their master plan. The town of Hampstead certified on May 27th, and the city of Westminster certified on March 21st. I'm sorry, March 27th.
Yep.
And the city of Westminster certified on March 21st, consistent with their own master plans. Although the city of Hampstead certified consistent, as part of the motion, the town of Hampstead system actually is owned and operated by the county, so that'll be part of the motion as well for us to certify that portion consistent with our master plans. So quickly, here are the maps. So this is the Twin Arts Mobile Home Park. There's roughly potential for 20 potential unit lots for mobile home aspects. Again, this is not going to be annexed into the city limits. However, for them to get off their contaminated well, the city has worked with MDE to bring them onto their water service system.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
What's the source of the contamination there?
That I'm not sure of.
I mean, are other people on well?
I mean, that's a very good possibility. However, I think since this is a larger unit that has a centralized well, I believe that's why the state came in forward. But yes, you're probably correct. There could be more other wells that have the contamination. However, them being single lots with single residential units, the state maybe has not made a determination yet. But however, as you see, everything in and around here is currently, a lot of it is already tied in except for across the street.
I see.
So everything here is within the system or has the ability to tie in at some point. This was the only outlier because it was outside, or is outside the town limits.
So is the town encouraging folks that are on well to have their systems tested for PFAS?
I mean, I do know the town itself has had issues, so I'm sure the town is probably working with, though, if there's anybody within the town limits that are still on wells, if they haven't already connected, they probably are being encouraged to connect at some point.
Yeah.
But typically, towns do not serve outside their corporate limits, this being an outlier because of the nature of it.
Yeah.
This is the city of Westminster property, and this is the Stonegate subdivision. These two parcels were owned previously by the Dull family. They have now been since repurchased, and they're looking to, down the road, do a subdivision. So their request was to come back into the service area And we did work with the city of Westminster and the developer, and also with the city of Westminster having, being in a better shape water-wise now, with their increase of allocation potential, they had no issue with this coming back in and being online. As you can see, all the properties in and around it are within the service area already. Here it is on the sewer side. They will be coming in for sewer, and their connections will be through the Stonegate subdivision, either down this is Kent, I believe Kent Terrace or Kent Drive, they'll be connected there, and then there are easements on the backside of these residents that have utility easements that can be tied into so they can get to their service gravity fed.
So Price, I noticed on the table that's included with these projects, the population increases, but the GPCD, is that gross?
Yeah, the gross capita per day.
Decreases. Is that because Westminster has gained some efficiency in their system? Or?
I mean, the gross capita per day is based on the population divided by the amount used, and you're correct. So the efficiency typically, in everything I've seen, especially with the triennial, the demands went down. And it could be because of lower flow toilets, more efficient aspect of things. So that's typically where it comes about, is that efficiencies. And when you look at the existing areas, those are more true numbers because those are actually what is either being pumped or what is going into the house versus the priority future estimates.
Gotcha.
So they're typically a bit higher.
Thank you.
This is what's known as the Michaels property in Hampstead, which backs up to, this is Panther Drive right here, and then North Carroll High School is up in this vicinity. This went through an annexation about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and this property has been in future. However, they're looking to move forward, so they wanted to move their potential demand from future to priority, which is 0 to 6, which gives them ability to start developing. There's a very small strip that is along Panther that has been in existing, that has if you do the math, there's roughly 5 units. This total acreage being brought in is for 40 units. If you include that 5, that's 45 units. I believe they're not looking to do any more than 45. They're probably going to do roughly 40 units. So their demand is actually in good shape.
What was the date? I'm sorry, I'm being real nitpicky with some of this stuff. I do read it, so. What was the date that the Hampstead certified the amendment?
That was on March the 27th.
Because the letter wasn't dated. Thank you.
This is the overall freedom map for water. This is known as the Schoolhouse Overlook, which came in actually for, I believe, annexation a couple years ago, as well as for water and sewer. They have since, this is going to be zone conservation, they have since looked at, and they, I guess based on the topography of the land and what they're looking to do, they realize that water going on wells is more cost effective for them. However, sewer, they would still like to connect to public sewer. So this is just to remove those 5 potential homes from the system. This is the Zabel property, but this portion right down here, even though it's shown as parcel 57, this whole parcel is 57. This is the southeast portion, which is zone conservation. So when this came in, the original plan was to be a higher density for the whole Zabel property. However, when during the rezonings, when the commissioners, they chose to do, I believe, low density, 40,000, and then this portion they kept at conservation. So with that being said, the developer came back and said, well, if this conservation is better to develop that on well and septic. So And they said they would have done that in the first place if the zoning was going to stay, if they knew it was going to be conservation. So they requested for this particular portion, which can have 5 lots on it, to be removed from the service area, both water and sewer. And as you see, it's the exact same thing for the sewer side. And, talk about the, how the amendment's consistent with the Carroll County Master Plan. Obviously, it promotes communication between municipalities and the county, because we have to work together since a lot of the systems are within the limits of our municipalities. Looking to enhance the water quality of Carroll County's rivers and all that aspect. So it is better for some things to be on sewer versus being on private septic, if that's the case. But on the other side, this is also providing quality water for those areas that may have issues with PFAS and bringing those in. To the extent feasible, we're adding adequate and appropriate community facilities. We'll protect. In this case, we're not really. There's no mineral resources that are looking to be protected per se. We are developing in areas that are currently in the priority growth area and priority funding area and the growth area for the towns and or the county. And as you alluded to earlier, so yes, the tables did change some. I believe it was maybe in the Freedom Sykesville, those tables, the minimum amount that was coming out didn't change the numbers that much. So you'll notice that if you look at the previous triennial, more than likely the demands are exactly the same because of the decimal points, they didn't move. So the next steps, I am looking to brief the county commission on the 25th and request a public hearing. And that public hearing, should the request be good, will occur on May the 16th with the potential adoption on the 16th if there is no comment or any objections, or if they want to choose to leave the record open, they can, and we'll look for adoption on May the 30th. And then, of course, I will forward this to MDE, and it does not go into effect until MDE gives final approval.
Bryce, I've got 2 questions as I sit here, and I know everybody's ready to wrap this up. The first one is with respect to the PFAS thing, which I guess is actually looked it up, and I can't pronounce the word, so I'll just go with PFAS. Right. So when we find that somebody's got a well water problem, as a county, are we under any obligation to inform other people around?
I think in essence, that is more probably along the lines of the health department in the state, since they're the ones that regulate and look at those aspects. So I can't say truthfully or definitively if we have an obligation. However, I do know when it comes to our water qualities, right? For like the Freedom Sewer, the water plant, and that aspect, we do water quality and those are made public, and you have to look at those. However, for individual wells, I'm not sure when it comes to the testing, if a house A does the testing and they having high levels of PFAS, if it's mandated by the health department for them to let house B and C know that you may want to.
I'm just curious if now that we know, if we are under any obligation, that's just a question I was curious about, and I just wanted to ask it. And then the second one is, and this is kind of weird because there have been concerns down there in the Freedom area about access to sewer. And the question I'm about to ask basically says, put more people back on sewer. But should we be concerned at all about, I know it's only a certain number of homes, but in that it was on land that was zoned conservation, and that topography there flows directly into the reservoir and that creek at the bottom of the hill on Marriott Road. Should we be concerned at all about runoff and that sort of thing, and taking these folks off of putting them on septic where that runoff could end up back in the stream? Should we be concerned about that?
Are you speaking of the one that's known as
Yes, the
Schoolhouse.
Zabel,
Okay, the Zabel property,
the rest of it will be on water and sewer.
correct, yes.
So we're only talking about, what, 5, 6 homes?
Be 5 homes. However, with the minimum lot size in the conservation, which is 3 acres, that is, it is hard for, I think, the cost for a developer to install water and sewer is going to be greatly more than they're able to recoup, per se, because they're only able to get 5 homes, and whatever the cost per foot for those 5 homes would be in that aspect. And typically, we do not like to serve anything on, that's zone conservation, that type of thing, because it's such a large area, and those are better for septics
Okay.
versus for.
Good enough. Thank you.
So with all of that, I've got a recommended motion, and I'll just go ahead and read it. So I'm asking for the Carroll County Planning and Zoning Commission to certify that this 2024 spring amendment to the Carroll County Water and Sewer Master Plan as it pertains to the county, which would be the Freedom area and the Hampstead sewer, is consistent with the 2014 Carroll County Master Plan amended 2019 and the 2018 Freedom Community Comprehensive Plan. Furthermore, this commission looks to forward all the amendments and the Planning Commission certifications for the town of Mount Airy, for the town of Hampstead, as well as the city of Westminster to the Board of County Commissioners for adoption.
Okay.
Need a motion?
Motion what he said?
Yeah.
It's written out.
Bryce, I think you do a heck of a job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Into the details and the numbers and all that kind of stuff, and really appreciate your presentations to us.
You're
It's
welcome.
always top shelf. So a motion. Can I just say I motion what Price said? Is that acceptable?
Yes,
Yeah,
so moved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, reiterate.
I'll
make
second.
a motion what Price said.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Then we are approved, and I believe I may have signed. So, yes, so I omitted the public comment for that amendment. Was there any general public comment? Okay, hearing none, then I will.
Motion, we adjourn.
You're quick, Richard.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.